Good evening and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop. We'd like to start by thanking Enduro for their ongoing support in bringing you our live weekly Q&A. Tonight we're fortunate enough to be speaking with Nick Hovey from Hovey's Working Dogs.
Nick will be picking who he thinks has asked the best question of the night, and I'll win a bag of Enduro high-energy food for working dogs with real kangaroo meat.
Hey Nick, how you going?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Laura. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. How's it feel being back on Dog Talk?
Yeah, it's weird being on the interviewee end.
Yeah. Weird. Talking about weird, mate. That's a nice jacket you got there.
Thank you. It's my ugly sweater.
Your ugly sweater.
Yeah.
Looks anything but, mate.
Thank you. Thank you,
mate. What kind of day was up for you today?
We carted some yearling heifers across to one of our blocks about 25 k's up the road, and carted the 2-year-old heifers due to calve back home. So I had our little Mitsubishi canner. It's about 18 foot long, and I was following the big boys in the semis.
Oh, how cute!
Behind, yeah, it was a bit cute.
Nick, for people out there that may not know Nick Hovey, mate, you want to tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, where you work?
Yep. So I grew up in Sydney, and actually I grew up sort of all over the place: Sydney, Adelaide, Melbourne, and then Sydney again. And have sort of moved to a couple of different jobs since I left school. One was at Goulburn on a big sheep place there. Then went to a Wagyu and sheep or mixed farming enterprise at Illabo. Then all sheep again at Frogmore. About 8,000 acres, and it was 32,500 sheep when I left. And started here at Blue E 9.5 years ago and have never looked back. So we're all cattle, breeding composite, Angus Shorthorn original base, and then have thrown some Simmental and US-based composite genetics into the mix, testing for feed efficiency, and selling upwards of 50 bulls a year.
Do you mind telling us why the moving around when you were younger?
Just getting experience, getting like I was pretty green when I went to Goulburn. I bought my first dog when I was living in Sydney and working in the Hawkesbury, and sort of got him half started, first Kelpie dog, and I was actually a member of the Hawkesbury Club and out there, as many Saturdays as I could. But yeah, just gaining more experience, and then when I saw the job where I am now, I just looked at it and I love working cattle. I really wanted to pursue working cattle with my dogs as well, and the program just looked amazing. So I thought I'll tick most of those boxes, and applied for the job.
Yeah. Back a step from that, I mean the Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney.
Oh, yeah, righto. Dad's work.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dad changed a few jobs, and he was pretty high up in various companies. So yeah, we shifted about a bit, which I wouldn't recommend to everyone. It's hard starting a new school halfway through the year. Yeah. And all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And a young fella ending up with a Kelpie dog in the Hawkesbury, mate. How'd that come to be?
So mum's sister married a farmer up at Glargamone, so out past Dubbo.
Yep.
And we spent as many holidays there as we could. And it was really one set of holidays a year. And he had some really good dogs. When I was growing up, he was all sheep wheat, which they were actually, I've since found out, his main dog one of his main dogs that I remember was actually a red, sort of medium coated collie, like a tricoloured fella, and he was cool. Like, he was a big dog from what I remember. I would have been maybe 4. So I just loved Loved dogs. Grew up I always wanted one. Mum and Dad always said I could never have a dog, which was fair enough. But I was still living there and had a job out in the Hawkesbury. And I sort of said to my boss at the time, I was like, look, if I get a dog, can I bring him to work every day? Won't work him on the cattle there. And he said, yeah, that's fine. So I went and bought a pup, took him home and got in a whole lot of trouble. But I've never looked back.
I think we've all done that one. Brought
Yeah.
a dog home and gotten in trouble.
Yeah, but the size of mum and dad's backyard, it would never have worked if I wasn't going out every day. And I was working there with Al McLaren at Sweeve and Angus and working there during the week, doing a bit of TAFE, and then on weekends I was also out at Tobruk Sheep Station.
Mm-hmm.
I always had that dog with me everywhere I went.
It's funny you mentioned Tobruk. I think that's got a lease up for that, or it's for sale at the moment.
Sold a little while ago to Sydney people.
Okay.
Now.
Yeah, cool. And mate, when you're in Sydney, like, what were your aspirations? You always wanted to be out on property, like that was a given, or was there another career path you thought of following?
I did at one stage want to go down the animal nutrition route, be a nutritionist, but really, like, from as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a farmer, and my brother wanted to go into the army, and we both did what we wanted to do. So that was pretty cool. And
both ended up playing around on podcasts.
What's that?
And both ended up playing around on podcasts.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot I sent you his War Dogs podcast.
Yeah. Enjoy listening to that too, mate. So, what was the other avenue you thought about?
Oh, animal nutrition.
Animal nutrition. What deterred you from animal nutrition and go down the?
I actually did 8 weeks at uni and I hated it. It just wasn't for me. And I went down to Sweven up in Cat-Eye and had a week there that was just supposed to be my study week, but doing a bit of work for Al, just helping him out, and he ended up offering me a job. So I had to take it.
Beautiful. And now Blue E, mate. Do you want to tell us what you breed for there? Like you're a little bit unique, right?
Yeah, so we select, have been selecting and testing for feed efficiency for the longest in the world, like out of any herd. The trainee research project is where my boss got the taste for it, and now that research project finished up, and he took the idea of breeding for feed efficiency on and decided to do it with a crossbred animal. And it's been a hard slog for the business in the 25 years, especially with the rise of Angus and things. So we're really, feed efficiency is a huge goal, a huge focus, but we're not limiting ourselves. Like, they've got to be fertile, they've got to have good growth, muscularity, they've got to be structurally sound, and feed efficiency. So they're our 5 main pillars of breeding, and the results pay off.
Yeah,
absolutely, mate.
I was going to ask.
I'm just looking at a question coming here. I'm going, I might ask this one a bit later.
So,
you're right, Laura. Sorry, what was that?
Bluey's there out near Cowra, but you've been all over the state and everything. Is there something about Bluey that's kept you there for 9 years?
Just how interesting the program is, and like how involved I am in it. A lot of the day-to-day runnings, and management decisions are shared with myself and my boss John and the other fellow I work with, Danny. Like, it's a pretty inclusive environment. We've got some really high tech gear from Canada called Vitelli gear, or was Grow Safe Systems, and they're individual feed bunks that are all on load cells. Only one animal can access those feed bunks at a time. And so we know exactly what the animals are eating, what animal is eating and how much they're eating at any given time. And that's over a 70-day period. So that's, big part of just the interesting part of the program is why I'm where I am today. And I've got my own stud cows that are run between here and an adjustment block, and combined into the herd. So yeah.
Are you a breakout for farming in your own family?
Yeah, I'm a throwback. So or a comeback, as the Marinos would call it, because mum's father was really little, probably about 4, and they walked off a farm at Angonia out near Burke.
Yeah.
In the roaring early 1900s drought. And so that's, I've gone back in. Would love to buy my own place, but cost of property at the moment is a bit out of hand, so don't know how we'll do that.
And have you had any mentors like working in? Like obviously, you said you got a love for cattle there. Like, was that off the back of someone else or a few people?
There's a few big ones in there. Like Al McLaren, who's down there in the Hawkesbury, he really sort of took me under his wing and guided me. And he believed in me. And then when he thought it was ready for me to go to my next job, he said, "Look, I reckon you should, go and have a crack and get out there." So without him, I probably could say I wouldn't be where I am now.
Alistair, yeah?
That's Alistair, yeah.
Yep.
My boss is a pretty big mentor, and a fellow called Dick Whale, who's our structural assessment fella. He's great to talk to. Like, he's so passionate about the industry, and he's been there. There's probably a few others, but in terms of cattle, but probably I just can't think of it at the moment.
Yeah, cool. And you mentioned like the setup you guys have there with your feed cells. You actually install these remote in different areas as well, right?
Yeah, correct. So I've done a fair few installs. I've been up to AACO and and Kiwi feedlots, and seen some pretty cool operations and pretty cool, different setups. Over at Tamania in New Zealand, where you look out, you're 150 meters from the ocean, and you turn around and there's a snow-capped mountain behind you. Like, it was a really cool spot to work. It was cold and wet, and I want to go back to that spot because it's amazing. We're actually, Lauren and I are flying out there I'm going to do a job in Ashburton next week.
Yeah, wow.
And I can't imagine these kind of setups are like cheap to set up. So there obviously have to be some great data behind them for people to make that investment.
Yeah. Yeah. So the data's like high precision. So the weight of the bunks is being taken every second. And it's to the gram.
So the bunkers, obviously, that's what the feed's sitting in?
Yeah, the feed bunkers, where the feed is. And then I set up a walkover weighing system that actually just takes the animal steps with their front feet onto the platform as they have a drink. And it's not just take one weight and they go. It's taking a weight every second while they're drinking. So you could have an animal drink for 500 seconds in a day. So you've got 500 weights. And that just compiles it down and gets really, really accurate average daily gain. It's really accurate. yeah, one of the cool things is environmentally, it's the reduced feed intake is directly correlated with reduced methane output.
Which is kind of a bit of the direction that's a big part of it too, is methane output, right?
Yeah, it's huge now, and it's hard because there are people that still believe that cattle aren't a problem, but I think we just need to get on with it. Like, we can all play our part and do something. So if we can reduce our methane output by 15-20%, but also put carbon into the soil, and like we can make big changes and big impacts.
So what impact, talking about impact, what impact do your dogs have out there, mate? How do you use your dogs day to day?
Mate, anywhere from pulling the bulls that are on feed into the yards to weigh them and put them back, to mustering heifers out in pretty scrubby granite country that's covered in pine trees and you can hardly see, what's going on. So yeah, they're huge for me, and I don't like going out and moving a mob of cattle without my dogs, especially a mob of 2-year-old bulls. 2-year-old bulls just fight like idiots, and you put a couple of dogs in there that know where to, when to hit an animal to break up a fight, whether it's that on the front foot or a nose as they pull apart, and it whips them into shape pretty quickly, and you just go on and get about your job. Like, otherwise you could end up taking a lot longer to muster those bulls, paddock A to paddock D, if you had bulls going here, there and everywhere just because they're bluing like teenagers.
Yeah.
Could you do your job without dogs?
Yeah, I could.
Yeah.
Would I want to? No.
I think that's probably the better question. Would you want to?
Yeah, no, God, no.
So you want to tell us a little bit about your team? Because I know you've got a few different dogs in there.
Yep. So, we'll start with Bill. I bought him from Alan Munn's back in 2018, I think. Alan actually rang me up and said, "Oh, I've got another dog for you." And I was like, "Oh, that's handy because the original dog I've bought off you has just broken his leg." And so I spent $2,500 on him in a Blaney Vets with Howard Thompson, getting a plate and 6 screws put in. And I went and had a look at this dog at Allen's and sort of thought about it for a week and called him back and said, "Oh, I think I better take him." And yeah, so I spent $7,500 on 2 dogs in the week, which, look at it now, and that's cheap.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's really cheap. So Bill's he's done everything with me. I can have a lot of fun with him, and I can send him up a hill and, put 3 head around some rocks just if I want to, or like in the scrub, I know that he's got me covered. I can send him out and he'll bring him back. And I'm really happy with that. So my next dog, my number 2, is Craigley Sky, and I bought her as a pup from Jamie Sturrock, Jamie and Marnie, and she was the fluffiest cutest little dog you've ever seen, and she's the same age as my daughter's Harper's sausage dog, probably like 2 weeks younger. And yeah, she terrorized him. My brother actually picked her up from the transport for me over in Bathurst, and they had her for about 2 hours. And she, at 8 weeks old, had their 12-month-old cavoodle just like not wanting to be around because she was pretty full on. So we thought this is gonna be fun. But yeah, she's awesome. Like she's pretty clean and like pretty correct. She'll bite nose, front foot, and back foot, which again on bulls is so handy for all three. And I've never really valued the front foot bite because I haven't had it, but it's amazing how quickly it has been able to pull some animals up because they lose that weapon. And then Cap, I bought. He's a Langland Cap, out of a Dewey Tweed bitch that Bianca Godson bred.
Yep.
I managed to get the only one out of the litter that was for sale, and he's developing really nicely. Sometimes he give me sometimes I just can't stand him, but then 90% of the time, I really like him. So I ended up having to take him to the Australian champs because Sky came on heat. So ran him around, and he was pretty good. I got full course in the Cowdog Challenge with him, which was pretty cool. And then I've got a male pup, tricolored pup by Bill out of Sky that I bred 12 months ago, and just taking him pretty casually, not putting too much pressure on him. He's a little bit later to mature in the head. So I actually put him on cattle the other day for the first time because he was sort of getting a bit lazy on sheep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's going to be pretty good. And I just actually got a Bill, a 2-year-old Bill bitch, who's out of an Alpine Dingo, probably like one of the last Alpine Dingo daughters. So she's 2-year-old, not a lot done with her. So it'll be cool to see how I can develop her as well.
And a bloke that starts with a Kelpie pup, a team of collies. What's going on there?
I don't know. I mean, I think I always thought I wanted Kelpies, but I had that red and tan Kelpie when I was in the Hawkesbury, and I bought, when I moved to Goulburn, I bought a collie with a little bit of Kelpie in it, but collie bitch called Ida from Dave Bennett up at Grafton, and she just changed my mind. Like that dog taught me everything, and I'll swear by it. Like it's the best $1,000 I've ever spent on a female because she taught me so much. And she's still with me today. She's 13 and a half, and she just lives in the house yard now. Pops over to the yards if we're over there, and just sits under the truck and watches us. But
says g'day.
Yeah, says g'day. Won't come and work. She knows she's not quick enough. So I don't know. That she's probably what changed me across to collies.
Mm-hmm.
So
you've obviously mentioned a few Aussie bloodlines and UK bloodlines. There's a question here from Jacob Ryan. He's asked, do you prefer the UK blood over the Australian blood collies? If so, or why not? What are the advantages and disadvantages of both of those lines in your opinion?
I think the UK works for me. So just because I like them being a lot more direct, and that's what I've found has worked, or that's the dogs that I've had with the UK blood are quite direct. Not taking anything away. Like I really want a pup from a fellow like Dave Steele at Coolway Border Collies, and he's got some really good solid Australian lines there as well. So it's just what suits me is that UK with a little dash of Aussie stuff, and maybe a little bit of Aussie, a lot of Aussie dash with a little bit of UK works too. But yeah, I'm happy with it. So I'm sticking with it at this stage. Yeah.
Do you find those lines a little bit more biddable?
Yeah, I think so. Like Bill's, other than the fact that Bill's mother was bred here, like Bill's full UK, and I can put that dog, anywhere. My Aussie bred old girl, she was a lot more heading instinct, and she was a lot harder to get off the head. And I don't do a lot of, balance work at work. Like I'll just work however the paddock allows me to. Sometimes it might be, I'm 200 meters off my stock because I can't actually get to them, because of the terrain. So I've got to have my dogs, trailing behind them and not trying to fight me to get to the head, and or other times, I might get into a paddock and flick ahead and let them balance up to me, because I'll flick ahead and go and open a gate and just wait at the gate. So I feel like for me, what's worked with the UK stuff is that they're a lot easier to come in and settle in behind and drive.
Yep.
And drive away, rather not necessarily, drive stock by themselves, but just drive away from me if I need to.
And do you find those UK lines that you're using, they work lower or they set themselves up higher?
Yeah.
And the reason I was going to ask that, because I noticed, like, if you speak to someone like Coxie, for example, talks about dogs working under their sheep opposed to working higher. And I was wondering if you experience that with cattle, how you found cattle flowing off those dogs that work lower to the ground than those dogs that presented themselves up higher.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever noticed anything like that. I'll probably go out tomorrow and
have a squeeze.
Yeah. I know, like a dog like Sky, she's only got to float past the eye line of a beast and they turn. And she's a dog with the darkest eyes of any of my dogs. And I know, some of the old fellas like the John Hollingdales and Nicholsons, they used to talk about that stuff a lot, like real dark eyes in their dogs. And, I find it interesting. It's probably just anecdotal hearsay, but yeah.
And light coloured eyes, like upsetting stock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. And do you find your dogs, like, do you like a team of similar style of dogs, or does every dog have to bring something different to the table?
I'm happy for excuse me. I'm happy for dogs to bring something different to the table, but I also have a bit of a prerequisite that I prefer to be able to go to my kennels and pick any of my going dogs and just take them out and move 50 steers, 50 bulls, like dry cattle by themselves and do a job. Because then I can put individual time on a big mob, a bigger group of cattle on them as well. So they've got to have enough in them to be moving that. And a lot of people, some people might disagree with my reasoning there, but I just prefer to be able to take one dog out. So they've sort of all got to be pretty similar. Bill doesn't have any back end bite, but Cap and Sky do. So I know if I'm going to be coming up to a creek crossing or something that is going to be tough, that I've, got to take one of those two dogs to make sure it's going to happen. Yeah.
Speaking of, like, you mentioned backhand bite and creeks there, any bark in your team?
No.
Could you see bark being useful in your team at all?
I get real anxious when dogs bark. Like if my dogs were going off right now, you'd see my head just probably about to burst. So I really dislike bark. I can see it as a useful tool, moving dry stock for sure. Yeah, and yeah, people use it to help them cross creeks and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I'm happy without it, so I'll stay without it.
Let's go.
So, what do you like to see? A young pup starting out. What does it need to show you?
It's got to show me instinct and drive, and from there, I just develop a bond with it. Like I don't do a lot with my dogs until they're a fair bit older. I'll put some good foundation, like a stop and lead work and stuff, and just put them around sheep every now and then. But I only have 4 sheep here at the moment, and we have over 1,400 head of cattle. So I'm better off. Like I can't take a 6-month-old pup to work. So I need to, I just need to let them grow up a bit and let their bones develop. And as long as they've got the instinct, I know it'll come out if they're bred for it. Look, I'll only get something that I know he's bred well.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, you haven't got an overly big team there either for, having access to so much cattle.
No, I don't. But I haven't found like I need to. Like we've got a 500 odd, stud cow herd, and anywhere between, it can be anywhere between 300 and 500 in a mob of cows, dry cows at a time. But I'm happy just running 2 or 3 dogs on them. 2 is easy enough. Like they're easy enough cattle to move. Every now and then they might get a bit tough somewhere. But yeah, I think if I had another 3 fully trained dogs under me, they'd just be getting wasted.
Yep. And that's pretty cool to recognise that as well.
Yeah, thanks.
It is, right? Why go and have all these numbers and then having dogs sit in the kennel all the time and rotating through? And, if you're obviously educating your stock good enough to not having to run schoolyard dogs as well. Yeah.
And I'm not the only person that moves stock on the place either. Like there's 3 of us here. So, it gets split fairly evenly. As I said, I don't do all the stock moves. And the other 2 don't have dogs, but they're happy without them. If I'm only doing a third of the stock moves, I don't need a stack of dogs. I was doing 2/3 of the stock moves. I'd probably still have the same amount of dogs.
Yeah, nice.
You said you don't do much with your young dogs until sort of that 12 months old. What is it that you're doing in that, first 12 months though that allows them to be ready to take to work? Because obviously you have a dog that, isn't showing instinct, doesn't have a stop, a recall, something on it to be able to take it to work. So what are you doing in that time beforehand?
So I use a combination of a few methods, like lead and lead training and using a stop train on a young pup, sort of same age as Jamie Sturrock does, and sort of watched a bit of what he does and use those methods. I've been lucky enough to be taught a few sort of pressure and recall methods of Jake Nowlan's, and I do a bit of that stuff, get them balanced up on sheep, and then just start, we're pretty lucky we can just go and pull 5 bulls out of our facility and, 5 little yearling bulls and just work them, and they're pretty nice. They're pretty easy to work. So I just build up from there, like, sort of 10, 12 months old, go from there with the young pup and, try and get them to ride a motorbike a bit. And then, we just we go from there. Like Cap, I'd really done not a lot with Cap until he was about 12 months old, and I went, I better pull my finger out, and I'd pull him out of the cage, every day to take him to work.
Yeah.
He's 18 months old now, and I'm really happy with how he's going.
So what are those things that you like to make sure you have before you do take him out then? Like, is there, something, or is it just
stop
basic stuff?
Yeah, stop, recall, and a balance. So and really it's gonna, as long as they're sort of those foundations are there, the wheels will fall off with a young dog. Like, it's guaranteed. And that's why you can't beat real work, in my opinion, for that stuff. Is like, just get your young dog out there, and as long as you can call it back, or get yourself into a position that you can stop it and then call it to you. That's to me really important.
So that lead work, is that you having that dog on the lead, just asking it to walk next to you, asking it to stop, putting a cue to stop, and how often would you do that?
So that's walking next to me in circles, and as Jamie teaches, it's like he teaches, and my understanding, of how he teaches it is, if you do one circle clockwise, you do one circle anti-clockwise. If you do two circles clockwise, you do two circles anti-clockwise. So you're not, like, sort of like still trying to just keep that dog balanced in its own head. I mean, dogs always end up one-sided or heavier to one side than the other, in my experience anyway, but just trying to get that foundation there. And a stop, so that's just on a slip lead, and just a stop, just a down stop on them, and it can be done in a few different ways, but usually with a slip lead and just the word stop.
Yeah.
And you like your dogs hitting their guts when you ask for a stop?
Yeah.
Why is that?
To be honest, I just prefer the look of it.
Yeah.
If they're on the ground, they're stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's a stand, if I teach them to stand, then that's fine. That's a stand, but they can still take a step forward. And I don't know. I just prefer it stop. It's somewhat too, like, it can switch the presence off a little bit. Like, it takes them being this big, big four-legged dog it just takes a little bit of size out of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you've then got all those your basics on that dog. You then take it to work, and what sort of jobs are you doing with it?
Look, it can be as simple. Well, the early stuff is just moving from one paddock to another. Like, as long as it's just through a gate.
Yeah.
I might have that dog on the back of the bike for half an hour, and then we get to the gate, and I let it off, and I let it do that final bit through the gate, whether it be with another dog or not. It doesn't really matter. It's usually better to go with another dog for my sake, but it's always just small starts.
Mm-hmm.
Just calmly get them through the gate, and then once we know we can do that, then we do a little bit of balance up work, in the paddock, and work off fence lines. And pretty lucky we've got laneways on the home block that is where most of our work is done. So I can just stick to one side of the laneway and let them, or lead up in front and just let them tail off behind.
And with that particular setup, are you relying on a bit of cast, or not too much? You prefer to go out and just drop your dogs out a bit?
Look, it varies. So sometimes our cutter will just draw to us anyway. So a good cast, a nice big wide cast isn't always necessary. But when we go out to the hills, I need that cast, and I need a dog to be like scanning for more stock. And doesn't matter. Like we're going back to dogs that complement each other in a team. You know, one dog can be always kicking out, and the other dog can just be, you know, it'll learn. I watch them learn off the other dogs, so I'm fine with that. But yeah, a big cast to me is important. Only because I know the country that I'm in.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'll just run down a note here I want to bring up with you a bit later.
Oh dear.
There's a question here from Mark Mangold. He's asked, if you have a young dog that appears to lack up walk strength and wants to get sticky at the rear of the training mob, do you think that eventually command over instinct will correct this problem, or will the dog always revert back to its original?
And stay sticky. Yeah, look, I don't know that I could answer that with full knowledge. I think you could overdrive a dog to make it do it, but you might be fighting that dog. And if I had to fight that dog to do it all the time, I would probably move it on anyway.
Yeah.
Just find something more that suits you rather than go and try and have that argument more frequently.
Yeah. Like I want a dog to walk up and freely walk up, and you know, on a training mob, you know, take him out onto 50. You know, it might change. You know, if that's developed on the training mob over some time, because maybe it's getting bored of the trainers. You know, it's like, oh, well, we're just going to go out here and we're going to move them from this side of the pen to this side of the pen to that side of the pen. Well, maybe it could just be instinctively in the dog that they know they don't need to do a lot on that little group of sheep.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of on the back of that question, like how important is identifying natural strength to you, and what is natural strength to yourself?
Well, natural strength on stock, on cattle, to me, is a dog that's going to hold its position, and hold its line, and you know, ask a question if it needs to. You could say, I'm happy for a dog to take a step out of the way and, you know, realign itself to then ask the question again. But if a dog, you know, turns and hightails at 20 meters, well, I'm not looking for that. That to me is not strength. I want something to stay there and hold itself and just keep asking the question until the animals move. And generally, you know, it doesn't take a lot. Cattle learn pretty quickly. I was taught a little while ago, back to the John Hollingdale and Ian Nicholson stuff, like a fellow called Brian Allen, who lives up the road from me. He's a mentor in my dogs that, you know, he said to me, always let your cattle come onto your dog when you're breaking them in. Don't let your dog go onto the cattle. He said they'll learn a lot quicker. And so I look at that, and if the cattle come on, the dogs hold their line and they ask the question, then that's fine. But if the cattle are walking onto the dog and the dog just, without even hesitating, just turns around, well, that's not going to be a dog that's going to suit me in the long run.
What if you have a young dog that you really like and it's not showing you all that natural, like it's not giving ground, but it's not 100% confident? How do you go about building strength in a pup like that? Or does that not suit you?
I'll keep taking it to work for a while. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I think as handlers, all too often we sack our dogs too quickly for things like that and don't give them the opportunity to grow and develop in the situation. So I'll just leave that dog out with Bill and let it develop and learn, watch Bill work and have Bill teach it how to shift stock a bit, and they gain confidence. Like, dogs can't be confident on cattle the first time you put them on there, because you can guarantee like first time I go and tell, Harper when she's 10, go and move these cattle, she'll be fine because she's been around them her whole life. But 10-year-old me would have been a different story. Like I would have tail turned out of there as well.
Oh, I know, 100%. Mate, you've mentioned Bill a few times there, mate. Is that Bill behind you there over your right shoulder?
Yeah, Lauren took that photo just after we started dating. Yeah. She worked for about half an hour trying to get that shot, and she nailed it.
Good job.
The one over the bed head is bigger again, is it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So how many times is that picture in the house then?
That one, it is only just once.
Mate, obviously Bill holds a special place in your heart, mate. What is it about Bill?
He's just my go-to dog. Like he is and has been for a long time, Mr. Reliable. I had, my first man's dog I got, like he was only 5 when he died on me, and like if I had the two of them together in full prime, like I only need 2 dogs, and he's probably the reason too that I have such a high expectation of what I'm going to use on. I say 50 bulls and 1 dog. Well, I can blame him for that if it all turns pear-shaped and I can't find that in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, so you're right, Laura. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you've mentioned a few times, like, you think that people move dogs on too quickly and all that. So there's a question here from Ryan Ackers, and it's, do you think dog auctions becoming more popular are a good thing for the industry, or are they bringing out people just looking for $1? How do you think we monitor and control these people in the industry to keep only the better dogs being sold?
I think the auctions have been a great thing in the last, 7 or 8 years, 10 years, and they can continue to be a great thing. But I feel like there needs to be, the auction committees, in my opinion, and I'm going to upset people here, but auction committees need to take their due diligence and watch the videos properly of the sale dogs and say, no, we don't want this dog in the sale. If they don't think it's worthy of being sold in an auction, like it's their auction to hold they've got to have their reputation on the line. And the agents are making pretty good money on these auctions, and if they're not bringing the buyers, and there was an auction only recently that was a huge passing rate. Now, was that because the buyers weren't there? Was that because people haven't valued their dogs the same as the market values their dogs at the moment? Like I wasn't there, but I looked at the results and thought, geez, that's pretty scary to see all those dogs passed in. We're in the livestock industry, and the cattle and sheep prices have plummeted.
Yeah.
So we need to expect that dog prices are going to drop as well. Like we can't think that the dog that made $15,000 last year isn't worth $15,000 this year. And that's because the livestock game, sheep and cattle have dropped.
Yeah, the market's gone in it.
And that's my opinion. It's going to upset people. But I would think maybe, an independent committee of people should be valuing.
The vetting committee, someone that vets, goes, all right, we've got to be of this standard, and we want this many in this category, this many in this category, and if they don't meet a particular standard, well, sorry.
Yeah, and if the committee says, or the panel says, we think your dog is not worth, or we think you should drop your reserve. If you want to sell your dog, we think you should do it. Then that committee should have the right to do that. Like they've got to uphold their own auction.
That doesn't mean the vendor has to drop it, though.
Well, it doesn't mean the vendor has to drop it, but it also doesn't mean that if the vendor doesn't want to drop it, and
then
The
they don't
auction
sell your dog. But
the auction committee
that's
could
part
say,
of
well,
being a
we don't-
vendor, isn't it? Like, I guess that side of it comes down to vendors more than it does auction committees. Because yes, they want their auction to look good, but if you value your dog more than what they do, well, someone might be willing to pay it. I understand both sides because yes, the committees are trying to make money and the auctioneers are trying to make money. But so's old mate selling his dog, and if he values it that, well, he wants to hope someone else does too. But he can't just drop it because the committee wants to make money today.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with that. And that's why it would get sticky with that idea.
Well, I guess that's why real estate has all their laws, don't they? Is so that it isn't sticky and it is what it is. And
and there's still there's still the agents that get around it and the people that get around it. But if someone wants 10,000 for a dog and they put $10,000 on the reserve, and it doesn't come near that in the bids, well, then if they're happy to take that dog home, then fine. But if they really wanted to sell that dog, then maybe they didn't value or look at the market correctly.
Not just that price. There's other investments going into that, right? Time, energy, travel, accommodation. Like there's a lot of other times going on that. So if dogs aren't selling, well, there's a lot of people let down as well.
Yeah.
So I think if people have put realistic reserves on their dogs, I think things should sail sweet.
Yeah.
That's also part of going to an auction, Daniel. Those costs are part of doing it. I think you can't budget that in. Yes,
yeah, but if you're going to go to auctions with unrealistic figures, well, there's people left out of pocket all around, right? Not just the vendor either, right? So everyone's making an investment in traveling or in making part in getting there.
That's part of selling your dog or your horse or your cattle at an auction. Those costs are part of it, whether you do it or not. If you don't want to include those costs or have those costs, then you need to sell privately, no matter what you're selling.
I'll be honest with you, the dog I put through the recent auction, I put those costs into my price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I covered those costs on top of what I thought the dog was worth and came away without a dog and made the sale. So I was happy with that, right? But I know there are other people there that had reserves way above expectations. And like you said, there was a massive passing rate. So.
And how many of those dogs weren't even bid on? Which is probably going back to Ryan's question a little bit too. How do we stop that from happening? Like, if those dogs aren't even getting a bid, that means the market isn't valuing those dogs.
Is it that, or is it just that it's a bad time of year?
Everyone's
struggling in every aspect of life. Like, the economy is falling that quickly that I don't know that you can make a fair judgment at this point in time within just how life is going.
I think it's a combination of everything we've spoken about there, the whole lot.
Yeah.
And it's just not, what they say, like the perfect storm. And at the moment, it wasn't the perfect storm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was the perfect storm for a failure, I guess. In that sense of cattle, like the livestock markets have dropped, and we're still trying to hold up high prices for our dogs, and it's just not there.
And there's an abundance of dogs, right? Like through COVID, everyone's screaming for dogs, not just for work, right? So a lot of people jumped on bandwagons, and now there's an oversupply and little demand.
Yeah, and maybe with the last 10 years of good solid auctions, maybe the sheep cockies, and cattle cockies that only need 1, 2, or 3 dogs have their 1, 2, or 3 dogs, and they don't. These guys don't need a team of 10 because they're not going, not going trialing, not going contracting. So maybe that might be another part to it.
But it definitely has to play into it.
Supply and demand.
Absolutely, mate. Speaking of, we mentioned obviously about breeding dogs here, and you mentioned Bill a few times and Bitches by Bill. Do you breed many pups for yourself?
No, not really. I've bred two litters in the last 3 years, and took one of those pups on to about 18 months old, 18 months old, and moved her on because I just didn't feel like she was what I needed. But apparently she's turned out, she's it was probably me that was giving her a lack of confidence. I was the problem, not her. And then last year we bred a litter to build a Sky, and main intention was to keep one or two for Lauren and I, and try and get them out. Like Alan Munns took one, and Louis Simpson's got one. Louis doing amazing things with his. She's a really handy little dog.
Don't talk too much. He's going to get a big head. He's listening to it. So
he's already got a big head. Can't get any bigger than that, surely. It's all right. Jakey can go and knock him down a peg tomorrow.
Yeah.
But what was obviously you said you wanted to your intention was to keep a couple for yourselves. What were you looking for?
I wanted to see how Sky would breed on, and I know, Bill's got everything I want. So just that combination of dog, they're both strong enough for me, and I just wanted to see how she'd breed on, and now they're 10 months old, so I'm going to start taking Tracker out and doing a bit more on cattle with him, and go from there with him.
Yeah, I noticed most of your team are dogs there.
Yeah, not intentional. I don't know how that happened because I hate dogs fighting. And Bill and Cap scrap every now and then, and it frustrates the buggeries out of me. But I'd prefer to have a team of bitches and one main dog. But it just somehow hasn't worked out that way this time.
Mate, speaking of breeding there's another question here from Ryan Ackers. Heterosis effects are well documented and proven in cattle and sheep to maximize growth and fertility traits. Do you think we can use these same principles to maximize working dog breeding for conformation and working traits? Or are people too caught up with the piece of paper attached to the dog to use these principles effectively?
The lamb industry's all over crossbreeding and hybrid vigor. Like they've got it now. You ask a prime lamb producer how to, get you a good lamb, and they say you got to have a 2 or 3-way cross. Cattle, I'd probably disagree with a lot, and that's because we're in the game of selling composite bulls, and it's really hard to sell. Doesn't matter how good they are, people just still want, something that looks like an Angus. So we just breed them with, 2 black genes to them, and they'll try a black calf, and they'll give all those benefits of hybrid vigor and heterosis, added fertility, still marble, still have the muscularity. They get more growth. It's free. That stuff's free. But in terms of dogs, I think plenty of people have tried to breed crossbred dogs. If structure is what's letting us down, then crossbreeding would really certainly help. It's not often you see it's not often you'd see a litter of, say, Kelpie Collie cross, first cross, all work out to be world beaters. But mind you, it's probably not often you'd see a full litter of straight Kelpies or straight Collies be world beaters. But they'll all work, maybe bar one. But it's that first cross. You look at Adam Robel's Soldier. He's a crossbred and he's amazing. And he's breeding on. And he's breeding onto collie bitches and he's breeding onto Kelpie bitches. So it's working there, but it doesn't always happen because even within the collie game, you've got so much variation that you can still crossbreed without going outside the walls of, the collie game. I know, my team of collies is if I wanted to use one of Mick Hudson's dogs over Sky, they're a complete outcross to what Sky is. So it'd be kind of like doing a crossbreeding anyway. It'd be quite an interesting thing to do because I think they both complement each other in some very good ways. But yeah, I don't know that brain function comes into heterosis at all. I've never seen anything that says it does, and I could be wrong. But we're looking for working ability, not production traits. So we're not looking for
growth rates.
Growth rates and extra fertility, which is where heterosis plays a big play.
Man, I'm not going to even pretend that I've ever heard the word heterosis before today at all. I think I've got a kind of idea.
That's what you read out before?
Yeah, I'm like, oh no, I won't say that. But yeah, I'd never heard it before. But now I believe I've got some kind of an idea. So heterosis is referring to breeding out to get a bigger animal.
Well, it's crossbreeding to use advantage of better bone structure, better fertility. It's kind of like a free pass. So you put one animal that's nowhere near related to another animal, they're the same species, but you get a free pass for fertility and extra growth, because it's just it's a phenomenon.
Yeah. So you're saying with your dogs then you aren't looking for like to like, you are looking for like to like rather than genetics, or is that incorrect?
Looking a lot more like to like in my team and what I will join to. I'm happy to go to something that's not related at all, but they've still got to have the same work traits. So, and also they've got to be, genetically tested and compatible, genetic disease wise.
Mm-hmm.
But if you did, like, obviously you got one of the own pups that you bred there, mate. Moving forward, if you did want to breed your own dogs, like more of them, mate, what are there any particular traits you'd love to put into your own line?
Look, I'm pretty happy with what I've got. So I've got some real good direct walk up in my dogs, and I know I can get a good cast out on them. And as far as I need to cast anyway, like it may not be as far as someone else does, but they're nice big casts for me, especially out in the Granite Hills. They'll all come and do a day's work with me. It's not like I'm worried about them packing it in or anything. There's probably nothing I really like to add. Just maybe, complement, just make sure I retain strength on cattle. I can't afford to do a breeding that none of the pups work out because, they can't hold a mob of cattle or can't shift a mob of cattle. I've had, my old girl, she was never able to do it by herself, but she was always very good at complementing other dogs. So breeding on from her isn't really ideal for me. I'm obviously not going to do it now, but knowing what I know now, I wouldn't breed on from her because she doesn't have all the traits that I'm after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, beautiful. Actually, you touched on it in the way you started that conversation about for what you like and for what works for you. Do you think some people get carried away and not breeding for themselves?
Yeah, I think they see the dollar. They might see the dollar signs.
Yep.
At the end of the day, whatever I do has to please myself first. Like I'm not trying to compare. I'm not trying to compare to anyone else. I'm not trying to better anyone else. I'm trying to better myself every day.
Yep.
So yeah, if I breed a litter, it's because I'm breeding a litter for me, and the excess I will sell to people that want dogs like that will suit them. But I'm not doing a designer litter for someone else.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
if Dan, you came and told me to sell a cavoodle, cavoodle cross collie to you, I wouldn't do it because I don't want one.
Yep.
I know you do, but I don't.
Oh, I was thinking like more like collie cross Maltese terrier or something, but yeah, cavoodle will do. Right.
No comment.
They actually got a name like Bordoodles or something, I think. You're all right there, Laura. I seen you coughing up a
Yeah,
lung there a couple of times. You
Right.
turned your microphone off. You're okay?
Yeah, we're all good. You've mentioned a few times trialing, Nick.
Yep.
Do you love it? You obviously went out to Scone for the Australian Champs.
Yep. I do as much as I can get to. Like we don't have many cattle trials down our way. Like I'm a cattle specialist, I would say, because we've only got 4 sheep. So I'm not going to teach my dogs to back 4 sheep. It's not in my charter. But yeah, like I get to as many as I can. Go to Holbrook. Have been to Holbrook every year since it started. Pete runs an awesome trial down there. The cattle are always really good, and he's just a good fella too to get along with and go and trial with. Did the USD this year. That was a flop. Again, 2 sessions of sheep that just I don't have sheepdogs.
The trial was a flop, or your dogs were flops?
Oh no, the trial for me was a flop. Every time I walk out of like a paddock section with sheep or a 3 sheep, I go, oh, I'm never going to 3 sheep again. But that's just because I don't have the dogs.
You just need to listen to Loz more. That's the problem.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I thought she'd help. I thought she broke your dogs in for you most of the time, anyways. Now all these young ones.
I wish she did. But no. No, and so yeah, got to Tamworth, the cow dog that Muzz ran with the and that was cool. Like it's just a different style of trial, and then managed to get up to the Australian. Zach and Grace and their team, like hats off. That was a really good weekend. A couple of like extra events that you could qualify for under lights or so made the top 25 for the maiden, novice and open, so made second round for all 3 of them. Didn't quite make it in the cow dog with him and only just missed out like with Cap in the cow dog. We got full course points, but the way that they take for the cow dog challenge, which is I think is really cool, the way they take dogs into the final isn't the top 20 scores. It's the top like the top percentage out of each rotation or each round.
Yeah.
So the dogs that had fresh cattle at the start of the day might have only got 3/4 way around the course. So they might have got 100 points out of 160. But dogs at the end of the day are getting the full course, and dogs in the middle might get a little bit further than the first dog. So it then just puts everything back on a level playing field, in my opinion. And I think they did a really good job by doing it that way. There was 5 dogs, I think, in my rotation with Cap. I was second last out. We did a full course. It was awesome. Like then Charlie Brummel from up in Queensland came through full course, and he was quicker than me. But they only took 1 dog out of that rotation. We were both on 160 points, but I was more than happy with him going through because I knew how that was. And I think that's a really fair way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's different to anything like I'm used to, or I suppose, and Laura as well. So, yeah, I haven't been exposed to that, and I can see the benefits of that as well.
Especially with recycled stock.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
They do
sometimes,
a bit.
yeah, like sheep can get better or worse throughout the day, depending on the conditions. And cattle, cattle can be real funny. Like it might be sunny in the morning, and they run really well. It might, become overcast and cloud up and start to drizzle, and they just, get really hard and doughy. And then go and put them under lights, and they can get better again. Like, so it just evens out that playing field. And yeah, and some people might only have one dog, and it's a really good dog, but they get put up in the first round. And so because they're breaking, not breaking the cattle in because they're already broken in, but because they're working the fresh cattle and they've never seen the course before, they've got it tougher than me, who had my, only half-trained dog there, and I had cattle that had seen the course before, so they knew where they were going. I just had to help guide them, and that's how I got around.
Yeah.
Um,
It can also work against you though if those cattle haven't, they've gone out but they haven't actually gone through the course, or they've been thrashed and bashed around the course. It can go against you too, can't it?
yeah, it could. Like if poor stockmanship was displayed or something, but really up there it was pretty good.
Yeah. Question just come through from Louis Simpson. Why aren't there many cattle dog trials in the south?
Finding the arenas to do them in, finding the cattle close enough by, people who are willing, like not necessarily willing to put the work in, but people, to put the work in to get them broken in.
Donating them.
Like it's really hard to donate cattle. Like my boss wouldn't donate cattle to a trial unless, if it wasn't for me. So, and we'll run one here eventually. It's just hard enough to get them off the ground. We're running a few Canoundra, Reeds Flat, Wadamandara a couple of years ago down here, and people move away. People, one couple's moved away, and the other one sort of, wound down his dogs a fair bit. So, and moved off the property where he was. Yeah, like I know there are some facility hire fees that are just ridiculous down here, and like, how do you afford that?
Yeah.
Mate, I know you're always up for a great idea. Mate, what if you could make any particular trial or any change to any trial? What would you like to see?
I can already guess it.
No, I really like the concept that the cow dog challenges have.
Yep.
Because they're points gained per obstacle, and you're not losing points, for being off course with your cattle. If the cattle are tough and they're off course and your dog does really good work to get them back, we haven't lost points for them being off course. You get back, you get through the obstacle, and you get your points rewarded for the obstacle. And the way that's set up, it doesn't matter if your dog working crosses, inside flanks, whatever you want to call them. It doesn't matter if that happens because it's set up that you're allowed to do it. So I think working on that kind of scenario, and if maybe you looked at the working cow dog and said, right, we'll run two different styles, or I'd love to have a crack at what the Americans do. They stand in one spot in their arena for the majority of their run, and they'll go and help, and they'll do a draft through a Maltese cross or a T draft or something. But they're in one spot and they're putting their dog all over that arena. And it doesn't matter if the dog crosses them. It doesn't matter if the dog comes behind them. As long as the dog's working their stock and they achieve the job. So yeah, I reckon if anything, running a trial like what Mars and Zach and Grace have run in the arena, Tamworth and Scone, but then also if we could run 2 days, run one like that, and then muck around and run one, American style.
Have you got an achievement you'd love to take out?
Look, a pat on the back from you, Dan, would be great.
Sweet. We can organise that, mate. That's okay.
No, I think it'd be nice to win. Win an Australian, whether that be a maiden, novice, or open. Nice to get there one day. May not happen for the next 20 years, but have a crack.
Love it.
Beautiful. Mate, as we move out of trialing here, something I did want to bring up with you, I wrote down earlier, was I know you're a massive advocate for gut health in dogs.
Yep.
Probiotics, mate. Do you want to touch on that for us?
Yeah. So we use a product called Pro Nature. It's called Protexin, which a lot of the horse people would have heard of. International Animal Health Products sell it, and I can say, like, hand on heart, we're not sponsored or anything, but I've spent a lot of time with the people that produce Pro Nature, and you always see people on Facebook going, "Oh, what's the best dog food? Because my dog's squirty." It's like, well, first thing you should be doing is making sure it's wormed and up to date. If it's 2 months after the worming, worm it. You should be doing them every 3 months, which change of season for me, the first day of spring, summer, autumn and winter, that's when I do mine. But if I get a new dog, I'll do it too. Changing your dog's diet, like if you buy a new dog in, whack some Protexin into it for a week with its feed, and it just gets it's probiotics for your dogs. Like, we eat yogurt and want probiotics from our yogurt, or some people drink Yakult. Like, we should be looking after our dogs in their guts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good message. I love how much care you put into your dogs, mate.
Oh, well, like, they're worth a lot. Like, and I need to make sure they're in tip-top shape. So they get fed well. Right. They get fed well, and I'll make sure their guts are right. If I feel like one of them's feeling a bit off, then we'll get a body worker in. I'll give them some Protexin, just make sure everything's right, because I need them to have good days.
Yeah, absolutely. In an investment just in your team and looking after another living being.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Mate, speaking of another living being, one I did want to just touch on there. You mentioned Lauren at the beginning there. Mate, how do you guys go? Do you guys train together often?
We don't train our dogs enough, to be honest. Yeah. But yeah, if we, we're sitting back on a lazy Sunday afternoon, and one of us might look at the other one and go, "Hey, let's go and train some dogs." So we did that. Yeah, did that on Sunday after she got home from Cumnock, and was dark by the time we finished. So we train and try and build each other up.
Does that always end well?
Look, I can't say I remember a time it's ended not well.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Yeah. That's
awesome. But obviously, because she shares a massive passion as well for her dogs, and especially health. Well, I love that you guys share like that passion for really looking after your team.
Thanks, mate.
In terms of that. No, you're more than welcome, mate. More than welcome. Mate, I think it's nearly that time of day. Oh, actually, no, it's not. Mate, what advice would you give to someone that wants to pursue a career in the livestock industry?
Just get out there and have a go. Like, go and do a few, go and do a few schools, like stock handling, dog schools. try and find an operation that is willing to take you on and let you learn, and someone who's pretty passionate about what you want to do. Like if you want to get into cattle, don't go and work on a pig farm, or a chook farm, because you want to work cattle. So get in there and just have a go. Like it's all right to make mistakes, but own them too. Like if you stuff up, just own it. And your bosses were a good boss and a good manager. If you make it, if you stuff up, they'll go, that's right. You're owning that. Like we'll fix it. But if you try and hide it and sweep it under the rug, it'll get found out. Everyone knows it, and you'll lose your job. Like they just, or the boss will just lose their temper because you're lying to them about it. Just be honest.
That's a great message that you put up there. Like accountability, owning it, all over that one. 100%. And mate, who would you like to see us sit down and have a chat with?
I'd really like to see Isaac Hotz. I'm going to throw him in on it. I'd love to jump in on and interview him as well while we're at it.
Yeah.
Hotsy probably, because he's a big influence. Like I've spent hours on the phone to him, like in 10, 11 o'clock at night kind of thing, talking about dogs. Like he's a very knowledgeable man. Someone like Ryan Akers be cool. Like he's got some pretty out there opinions and views on dogs. Like he won't hold back. Jake Nowlan, be good. Good to hear from him. I don't know, I'm sure I'll think of others, but there's probably even like just left of field blokes like a drover for Thompson's livestock. A fellow called Danny Quinn, who no one really knows him, but he's constantly in the yards at CTLX, like Carcor, pushing cattle around or pushing sheep around, the yards at Forbes, the yards at Cowra, and these guys have got really handy dogs, but nobody knows about them. And they're good stockmen too. So yeah, Danny Quinn, I'm going to throw him in there.
My boss, 7:30 tomorrow morning, I'm going to have a message from you with like 20 people, and that's going to grow every day, isn't it? Add it to our daily messages.
Every second.
Every second.
Add them to our daily videos.
Yeah, no, we won't talk about them.
Yeah.
Mate, was there a question that stood out for you tonight, and they will win a bag of Enduro high-energy food for working dogs with real kangaroo meat?
Yeah, I reckon Ryan's question on heterosis is just a full curveball.
Is that because that's a big word?
It's because you can't say it. No, it's a really interesting question, and there's so much to it. Like we use heterosis, and I think Lauren pointed out at one stage, like in the livestock or the sheep and cattle game, we use objective measurement. There's no objective measurement or EPDs, EBVs for dogs, and I don't know that you could ever do it. So yeah, I don't know how you could effectively utilize crossbreeding dogs like that. But yeah, it was pretty cool curveball.
Beautiful. Well, we'll get in contact with Ryan and get his details, and Nick, a bag coming your way as well for being our guest tonight. So
I'm going to send mine to Rough Track if that's all right with you guys.
We can organise that, mate. Thank you very much on behalf of Rough Track. I'd like to thank you for that, and we'll get that bag off to the young fellas out there.
They're doing an amazing job. So yeah, send it their way, please. Thank you.
Beautiful. One last question, as always, because you've asked us, but we've never asked you. Would you rather fight one duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks?
One duck for sure. I'd ruffle its feathers like nothing else.
I believe it too.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, definitely one duck.
Would you fight it or tickle it?
Probably pluck one of its feathers and then try and tickle it with its own
With
feather.
that feather?
Yeah,
That's
see if it works.
No.
If not, jump on it and see if it can fly.
Oh, mate. Oh, you'd be good for a good one. Buddy,
I didn't even think about it either. I knew it was coming. I didn't even think about it.
BS. You've been planning that one
No.
for 81 episodes.
No, hand on heart. I did not.
Mate, thank you very much for jumping on tonight. Really appreciate your time. Laura coughing a lung up there. Thanks for jumping on tonight. As always, without her, there's no show. Everyone listening, thanks for jumping on, listening, and your questions. Thanks for everyone listening back. And please remember, we learn every day, and the day we stop learning will be a sad one for all of us.
Thanks,
guys.
Good night, guys.
See ya.